Hey guys, welcome back to Pastoral Apologetics, and I want to take a question that was asked to me recently, and that is, which gospel came first? Most scholars agree that the Gospel of John was last, and so there's really very little disagreement on that. But there's some debate as to which gospel was first. I can tell you where I land on this. I believe that Mark's gospel was written first. That is in theological terms, that's called what you believe Markan priority. And Mark's gospel was probably written first, written about mid-50s AD. That's the reason. That's why 91% of the Gospel of Mark is found in the other Gospels. And Mark's gospel was probably the primary text that was used by Matthew and Luke. By the way, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are what are called the synoptic gospels. The word synoptic means to have the same view. And so now there is some debate. One of the early church fathers said that Matthew was first, and everyone kind of went with that, and then ordered it when we started printing the New Testament, that Matthew went first. But the way that the story goes is that Eusebius, who was a church historian in the 3rd century, ordered the Gospels as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John because Matthew's was the most popular. Augustine in the 4th century ran with it, believing that Eusebius meant that Matthew was first. Not really the case. It's that Matthew was the most popular. Mark being first solves most of the problems or the issues that show up between the Gospels, because Mark's version being the shortest, everyone just expands on what Mark writes. In fact, if you follow the flow of Matthew and Luke, they track with Mark, and then they'll expand and give a sermon, like in Matthew's gospel. He tracks with Mark, and so he will just stop and add a sermon that Jesus gave, and then kind of keep going back. And so Mark's gospel is just truncated and has very little sermon content from Jesus. Matthew and Luke expand and add more details. So it doesn't make sense necessarily that Matthew was first and then Mark took details away. And then, one final thing, if Matthew used Mark, which it seems to be the case because he follows the same format and chronology, where do we get all this other info? So some of it would be Matthew's own eyewitness account, but there's things like the genealogy of Jesus, the story of his birth, the slaughter in Bethlehem. These things he was not there for, like the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17, he wasn't there for. So scholars place all of that other stuff that could be eyewitness accounts or other documents, and they put it in the category of something that's called Q. And Q is short for Quell, which is a German word for source. And so some believe that there is a separate document that's circulated in the 1st century. I don't know that it has to be that complicated, but there were definitely other sources out there. When Luke's gospel opens, he acknowledges that there are other accounts that exist and that he did all this research to write an orderly account. So Luke was aware of Mark, he was aware of Matthew. So if you're reading something and something comes up, you get a documentary on the Bible that you read and somebody mentions Q, you'll know what it is. But anyway, more than likely, Mark came first, then Matthew, then Luke, then John. So hope that's helpful to you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, friends, keep reading.